Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Week 7, lingerie week of the Great British Sewing Bee. It's Unpicked, as always, with me, Stuart, and Ting over there in that box. How are you, Ting? All right?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you. Another week gone.
Another week. That's right. That's it. This is our last normal week. Next week is the quarterfinals. The week after is the semi-finals and the finals. 3 weeks to go, in theory. It's just whiz past, and all I feel like I've done is moan.
But it's the same as last year, isn't it? Because it's going to run into the school holidays again.
Yeah, but there we go. It's because I don't know why it was late, but it was late starting. Like it was last year, there was a reason, but this year, no idea. Who knows what goes on in the scheduling department? Anyway, let's go on to our comments. Excuse me, from last week. Blown away. Over 100 comments, all joining in with our moan, but positive moan. We were trying to be positive and not talk about timings, but sort of lay it down to rest. And I think we've done that now from looking at everyone's comments, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think I just said to you, I've been so busy this week, I didn't get to really read any of the comments, and I only really thought about it about 5 minutes ago. So this will be news to me because I haven't seen any this week.
Well, we'll have a look at a couple. There were so many, and everyone sort of agreeing and saying the same thing. And we're talking 100 comments. That's a lot of people saying the same thing about the show. This one here from published 1789. Such good comments. Thank you for trying to stay positive. But yes, the producer's judgment is off this time around, and they are diminishing the show with time pressure. I feel for them, as we do now. We feel for them too. And this is the bit that I think wonderfully captures many of our feelings. So thanks for putting this in published. It's grinding away at some of the happy spirit it had before, which that's what we loved about the Sewing Bee. It was like that on BBC Two, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, it isn't just since it's moved to BBC One, but it certainly feels like the last couple of series that they have been chipping away at that. And you might argue, did they others have too much time? Because they would sometimes go and help each other out. And of course, we're not seeing that because nobody's got any spare time. But that was part of it, wasn't it? It's getting advice from people who are more experienced and things like that. But
I agree, but I just thought that summed up that awkward situation that we were in last week, for week 6. And then this one tickled me, and I thought this would be a good one to talk about. This is from Practical Stitches. I am going to keep my fingers crossed that someone will make slippers for Lingerie Week. Pray they have enough space in the continuum to finish them. I fear there will be a major shortage of slippers in Great Britain shortly.
What was it they did make? They made, wasn't it trainers? Well, I mean, I threw numerous slippers at that point as well, I think. But they've made a few, haven't they? Which was ridiculous.
Indeed, slippers could have quite easily appeared in Lingerie Week. That would have been interesting. Nice, silky, smooth slippers. Though saying that, you'd be slipping around everywhere, wouldn't you? You'd be arse over.
You want something with a firm grip.
So thank you, Practical Stitches, for that, for raising the humour and for a giggle, which is what we're going to do today. So before we move on to Lingerie Week, who is left? So we lost Dear Georgie last week, so let's cover Georgie up. We have our 6 sewers left: Elsa, Alex, Luke, Marcus, Pasha, and Susie. Now, we're coming up to quarterfinals week, and normally from week 2 or week 3, we're talking about our favourites. Ting, come on, let's be positive now. Who are you looking forward to seeing in the quarterfinals? Name some names.
Well, I think it's getting. I think there is a bit of a divide. I think there's some people who are drifting from one side to the other. I think, forget the quarterfinals, semi-finals, or whatever you want to call it. I think, if we're looking towards the final, I would expect to see Alex there. I would like to see Luke there. I would expect to see Pasha there. I mean, Ailsa, I mean, she's had a bit of a week this week. Susie's been up and down. I think, there are a few where you can start to think maybe they should be there. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. You haven't got someone out of those 6 that you've secretly been rooting for from episode 1 that you're attached to because you've been seeing some fabulous stuff from them. No. And that's the bit I think. No, that's right. That's the bit that breaks my heart, really, this season, because normally we're arguing over our favourites and we're rooting for them. We can't wait to see them. But for me, I have had no connection. And I know a couple of the comments were saying they didn't have that connection with the sowers, with some of the sowers, or that connection where you're rooting for them each week. Let us know if that's been the case for you, or if you have had someone that you've been rooting for right from the beginning that caught your eye and you've fallen for and you hope to see them in the final, let us know. Myself, I've started to grow attached to Alex, and that's come out of the last 2 episodes, I think, her journey that she's going on. So I'm rooting to see Alex in the final for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think there wasn't in the first 2, 3, 4 weeks or whatever anyone who really stood out to me straight away, but I certainly have kept my eye on Luke. And Pasha. Pasha did have a glimmer that she's been, she's always been near the top since. I wouldn't say week 1 she caught my eye, but maybe week 3 with her, and then Luke maybe a couple of weeks ago. It was kind of like, well, he seems to be finishing garments, and it's a good sewer. So, I think no at the start, but certainly those 2 for me will be a slipper moment if they do not make the final.
Well, looking back over the garment of the weeks, Pasha has got it twice. Week 6 and this, spoiler already, week 7. And Alex has got it once for the Riviera one, and Elsa's got it twice too for week 3 and week 5. So could that be a potential trio for the final? We shall see. Okay, let's move on then. The pattern challenge was to do a pyjama blouse in lingerie week. They had flat piping to do and 5 buttons. And Patrick said they have to make their own contrast piping too. So choice of colour was going to play a part, I think, in this one. Nice little top, don't you think? For get this thing, not just 4 hours. They got 4 hours and 15 minutes. That all important extra. We mustn't grumble.
I'm not mentioning time at all.
No.
I'm going to talk about the pattern. I will talk about what they've done. I mean, it was a nice. It's a bit weird that you're only making a top, but I suppose it is the pattern challenge.
Yeah,
it would have required a lot more time if you were going to ask for a full set of pajamas. But then why not just ask for a like 90? Why not ask for something like that?
True.
Because it just seemed a bit incongruent to just have this top that, if you think, oh, well, I'm going to take this home when the show finishes, I've just got a top. You're going to be Donald Ducking it round the house while you're wearing that, aren't you?
For sure. It looks quite nice on the model there, actually.
They didn't make that one.
No, this is the sample one. Interesting colour piping there, I thought. Pink and then going for that sort of, maroony red colour?
Well, yeah, but that's complimentary, isn't it?
I suppose.
I wore my pink shirt with my maroon shoes today to work.
Oh.
So.
Well, let's take a look at them. I think I've got a group shot here. There we go. There's our 6 makes. And I think on the whole, they were finished. I can't remember.
To a varying degree of quality, but yes, more than
absolutely.
We've ever had.
We weren't shouting at the screens for more unfinished garments. Now we're in week 7. What do we think? No, I mean, nothing there blew us away, though, did it? I didn't go.
No, I think there was good colour choices, which is part of the challenge, choosing, certainly we saw that with Alex's, with the gold and the green, with Luke's, with the contrast. It really stood out. It was about standing out. And so him putting that white on really made it stand out.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
And the same with Pasha's, she'd picked the colour out. It shows how, we've talked about colour in previous episodes, and I know you get a bit stroppy about it now, but colour is important. And if that's part of the design, you don't want it to fade back. The judges said to Marcus, but it actually took Luke to say, well, no, you've got to pick out one of those colours.
Yeah,
you can't introduce a colour. It's either got to be. Marcus had the pattern on the top, so his piping had to be one of those colours. He couldn't introduce that purple piping because it wasn't in the top. Whereas if you take Alex's, which was just the two colours, the gold or the bronze and the green. That's fine because they're complementary colours. There's nothing to pull it out of. But when you've got a pattern top, that piping needed to be the white, the red, or the green. I don't think green would have worked very well either. But it had to be something that was in that top.
No, and I think, they said that, to make their own contrast piping. So would you say white was enough contrast there? Perhaps the red would have been a bit more bold and...
It's difficult because the blue is the main colour there. And obviously, yes, it's got the red, I think they're poppies on it. Yeah. I don't know if the red would have worked, to be fair. And we don't know Marcus's thing. We know he chose the wrong one to start off with, but you don't know whether he looked at maybe the red and the green and the white and then stumped, just went for the white after doing it. But I think the white was the right thing because it is a contrast. It would have been very easy to just use the same fabric and then the piping disappears. So I think there was enough of a contrast there. Even with this picture, you can see that it has a white piping on. It's not ultra standout, but it would be enough in real life.
Let's look at Luke's because you can see the contrast there. That really does pop, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's a good example of where he could have gone with a pink on that or the pale pink with that dark pink, but it wouldn't have stood out. But the white actually does the job of framing it. I don't think you could have got away with any other colour. I don't think you could have gone with like a black or a blue or something like that. I think it had to be white to make it pop.
Absolutely.
I don't think any other colour would have worked there.
We didn't seem to have button gate either this week, which was great. Pleased to see all buttons in that I saw.
Yes, but some of them were not quite right, and there's still an argument over how have they been taught to use those button functions. There's a lot to say. Well, yes, you should just press the button and it does it, but with this type of fabric it's so shifting that actually keeping your hand, not holding it down, but keeping your hands on it so that it can keep it generally flat, it probably would have stopped some of the problems that Ailsa had there with hers.
And a couple of them had that issue, didn't they? And then the hem issue at the bottom, we saw that being quite out of place on some of them too, didn't we?
Yeah, but I think that was more to do with the buttons rather than they hadn't hemmed it.
Right.
Because they obviously hemmed it all in one go.
And that was Susie's.
I think that was more to do the buttons pulled it out and then it didn't sit quite right on the mannequin.
If we go back to the group then, we had, as I say, there didn't seem to be anything other than Marcus with that colour choice, anything, frantic that came out of that round of shock horrors. We had Alex first, which, though I haven't got a single picture of Alex. Alex is there on the far left at the top of that group, as you look at it. Pasha second, Luke third, Marcus fourth, Ailsa fifth, and Susie sixth. We could see that.
That wasn't unreasonable. Both Ailsa and Susie had problems with their buttons. Then, of course, Marcus and I don't know who it was. It Ailsa as well? But they've done it left over right instead of right over left.
Oh, right.
They did
yes.
Way round. Yes.
See, that's interesting.
You know why, don't you?
Because they didn't read the pattern all the way through to start.
No. You know why it's round the other way, though, don't you?
For ladies and gents. Is it something about being on a horse? I thought it was something
No,
about I'm a knight and I've got to pull out my sword, and if I
no,
pull it,
that's when you
what?
drive on the right. It's not doing your shirt up.
Oh, go
The,
on.
the buttons are different because if you were a gentleman of the house, you would dress yourself. But if you were a lady of the house, your maid would dress you. So they're the other way around to make it easier for the maid to
Oh,
dress
I
you.
never knew that. Every day's a school day. Never knew that. Right, let's move on to the transformation challenge then. The transformation challenge was an interesting one, to say the least. Shapewear. Let's get the picture up for you all so you can see it. There. Shapewear, they had to combine it with lace, 2 meters of lace. Oh, sorry, Ting. There we go. And then behind you, there you go. And they had to combine it with lace, 2 meters of lace, to make a garment of their choice. But you can see there, that's Esme finger wagging, because she said she wants to see something exciting and unexpected.
Well,
Well, we saw something.
I mean, the transformation challenges, you're never going to get me on side for those anyway. And this was another thing. I mean, I kind of understood what they were trying to achieve here because, you know, obviously it's figure hugging. So therefore, it was going to be a tight garment that you then draped this lace around and created, you know, a silhouette with that. But I don't really understand why you needed the shapewear, because you could have just said, "Well, make an outfit out of lace and drape it all over the mannequin." You know,
Absolutely.
it didn't seem like it was massively a functional part of the. It didn't do its function, you know, because the minute you start cutting into it, well, if you're actually using it for shapewear, everything would start popping through all of those slashes and holes that you've just put in it, and
Indeed.
then you have lumps and bumps everywhere.
And then you start thinking, well, what are you going to transform the shapewear into? Because you can't really do much with it
Should have just made a swimming hat.
unless someone in the comments could let us know what you would have made with it. When I texted Ting, I said, the only thing I can think of is slashing into it and making something like, you know, from a horror film or a fancy dress and being a vampire. You know, with all that lace.
You know, we got some of that kind of,
did.
well, it's a bit 1980s Madonna type
Yeah.
dress, wasn't it?
Yeah, there we go.
I mean, it still looks like the morning after the night before when you're found in a skip. Having not quite made it home.
It's right, but this is where I'm thinking, well, it's a garment of their choice. Where I don't know. Were they being marked on how they cut the shapewear up or how they used the shapewear, or was it more about the lace? And that's where I can't help feeling for Marcus. Is that working? Because I actually
don't start saying I feel for Marcus, because all he did was create a tube of lace and then cut up some shapewear to make it look like some abs. It wasn't even a garment; it was a tube.
But is it not something unexpected?
It was unexpected that it wasn't better. When you look at the other things that are there and how much they've managed to do, it just seemed like, you know, there should have been a skirt on it. Or like they said, even if they'd cut some armholes in
It's true.
then at least it would have been more of a garment as opposed to something you'd spend the whole night hooking back up all the time.
But this is this what we've actually grown to love about Marcus? Is that unexpected? Has he been always throughout the last 6 weeks that one that is off the wall a bit, doing something different all the time, and we're now starting to appreciate that and love him for that?
I wouldn't go that far, but I think that he's decided to push himself. And you have to admire him for that, because this is a competition where if you don't follow the rules, you get kicked out. And surprise, surprise, that's what's happened. But at the same time, he's had a wonderful journey where he's been able to use techniques that he's not done before and, you know, push himself and learn new skills. And that's part of what he said last night, you know. So I think there's an element of that. But then if you wanted to go further in the competition, then maybe we should have stuck a little bit more to the brief and not being conventional. You don't have to be. They're not conventional, the rest of those designs on there, but a bit more conventional in your approach, maybe, so that you can do what you want to do and show off the skills that you have got.
Was there one there that you just went, wow, I love that. That's so clever?
No.
No?
Rubbish. I mean, I will give them their due. They've had a couple of transformation challenges where I have actually sat up and gone, oh, maybe they've listened to all of our comments in the past. But this was one of the ones where it was just like, well, that's just ridiculous. And they're all look rubbish. I mean,
Okay.
Alex's is not too bad, but she built onto the shapewear, whereas everyone else seemed to cut out of the shapewear. I mean,
Yes.
I don't even know what this monstrosity is on the end. I think that's Susie's, isn't it? Even when you got close up to it, the cups for the boobs were not going to cover it.
This one.
So
Yeah.
it was a bit, yeah.
Susie was fourth. Our winner was Pasha, because it
Surprised me a bit.
did it.
Well, I felt that Alex's was a more proper garment in that
Yeah.
respect. But
Alex's was. Yeah.
we've come to know in this challenge that, that this one is where it all goes out the window. And if you can come out with a silhouette that looks quite good, it doesn't matter if it's not actually wearable.
Was Pasha's a good example of what you talked about? The idea of using the lace to dress and cut up the shapewear a bit.
Yeah, I think there was a bit more there. But again, the whole point with shapewear is it's tight to hold you in place.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you wouldn't be able to then say, oh, I'll just do it. Because if you've got it, then everything would be bulging out. This would fit someone who didn't need to use shapewear. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so we go into the. Alex was the where are we? Pasha was first, so this one was first. That was Pasha, and bottom was Marcus there. Elsa was fifth. I can't remember which Elsa's one was there actually on that group one. Can you remember which one was Elsa's?
No, but then
No.
which one was Luke's?
That's a good
Because
question.
Susie's is on the end, isn't it? And then Marcus is there. Alex's is that one. So it's between the long and the short on the end and the
Oh, perhaps that one was
one in
Luke's.
the
Oh,
middle.
well, I'm sure the audience will let us know. But it now means that Elsa is kind of in the bottom two for the last two rounds. Susie was bottom on the previous one, and Marcus is there. So you've got three people going into the made to measure that we're sort of are in trouble. And they did do that little chat, didn't they, at the end where they talked about those three: Elsa, Susie, and Marcus. So it all comes down to the made to measure, and we know sometimes that has a stronger weighting. And they had to make a bustier dress. What have I written there? Bust cups, obviously. 5 hours. Were you excited about the bustier dress, T?
Well, I mean, given that we've had discussions about, how they never seem to want to repeat themselves, make a shirt, make a skirt, they
Yeah.
never seem to want to do that. But we've had similar, we've had corsets and boning and, tight
Yeah.
busset. We've had that before. And I just felt that for lingerie week, I mean, I know that, but it is a skill. I mean, I remember last year, Asma had made her own bras in the past, and so she excelled at this task. But I just felt that this was one of the ones that seemed a bit samey, and there was an element of you could have gone down the nightwear route, or if they hadn't done that pajama top, they could have done a full outfit or something like that for the made to measure, rather than something that we had seen before. But I appreciate that this allows them to be a bit more designery.
Yeah.
It does get to use the boning and the skills with that.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, I don't see many people who make their own clothes are worrying too much about boning. I think it is a bit of a niche skill. So I suppose
Very
you could
much
argue
so.
that it would sort the wheat from the chaff of the sowers in that respect.
Well,
But
let's have
I just feel that something maybe a little bit more practical might have been good for people watching the show anyway.
Let's have a quick look through them all. No particular order. We've got Elsa's. No, we haven't. Yes, we have. There we go.
Well, I mean, it was. I mean, I know I spoke up about Elsa a couple of weeks back and said, that she'd been doing quite well, but
Yeah.
like we've had in the past, she did not have a good week this week, and it's put her in that position. The two straps weren't applied in the same way. The skirt wasn't attached properly. the basic on the previous photo, the basic silhouette, I suppose,
It's
was what
lovely.
she wanted.
Yeah.
But you've then got to execute it, and this is the task that you've known about and could practice, even if you are practicing with calico. So there is an element of like, if you couldn't do it in your practice time, then you needed to make those adjustments so that you gave yourself the time you needed.
Yeah. Alex.
I like the idea of doing it essentially inside out, because it forced her to be very neat with her sewing. Luckily, it paid off for her, because it could have taken a lot longer. And, it could have looked awful. But she did really well, and actually deserved the praise that she got there. And the colour choices were brilliant. She just had messed up that overskirt of being too long.
Yes, yeah. But
and when you consider that netting is really easy to cut, she should put it on her model and just got on the floor with a pair of scissors and whipped around it and taken it up, taken off 2 or 3
I
inches.
know for many of the sewers, they had issues of the bust being a bit out and away from the boobs, didn't they? Whereas that fits a treat, doesn't it?
Well, it is made to measure, so that was part of the judging, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
It should do what it took on the tin.
Yeah. Luke's.
I liked the design, and I like the length of his. The way, it wasn't quite. Hello, I've gone again.
Oh yeah, you've gone again.
Tail, but it was a long. It was nice to have that there. It was a shame with the pleating, and again, it came a bit away at the bust. Because it's made to measure, that should have been a bit more precise in that respect. But the overall effect was very good.
But let's remember, we're talking about the sewing. It's right that this level of skill is at week 7, isn't it? Because in theory, you're talking about your best sewers before the quarterfinals, aren't you?
Yeah.
Mark, go on.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Marcus, I loved this. And I just thought the idea was great. Maybe I fell in love with the colours, but I liked how the tartan draped over. The idea, the concept, I just thought was great. But he did struggle with that whole top piece, didn't he? The actual busty.
And again, it's the idea of this is something you could have practiced. And so, therefore, if it was going to be too much work to put that white piping in, then he should have left it out. It was that thing so that he could have then had a slightly better finished garment where the skirt was attached properly and the zip was attached properly, rather than spending probably 2 hours doing all of that and then having to rush everything else. It's a case of, you got to choose your battles. But like we've just said with Marcus, he always was trying to push the envelope. And,
absolutely.
He didn't know they were going to do a piping challenge on the pajamas, so he probably sat there when he thought this up and thought this would be a good way to show off another skill, not knowing that he was going to have done it the day before in the other challenge.
But I just thought that the idea, the concept behind it was great. Pasha's, well, it looked stunning. I loved it.
Yeah.
And then
she's certainly got the knack. As a young designer, she's got the eye of how to do things. And, the placement there, you can't see those seams where on the bust and so on. It's so precise. She absolutely deserved to get Garment of the Week with that.
And then the lace on top there, as well as on top at the bottom, there's no sagging there. There's no excess lace. That's layering on top, sitting on top beautifully, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. My only concern, and that with this one, and with a couple of them, is they look like you forgot to put your dress on.
Oh,
they look that looks like she should now pull a lovely red number over the top of it, and that's kind of the bustier and the slip and the petticoat that was wearing underneath, and that's because she's used that nude and that black, which you often associate with undergarments.
Yeah,
but it was a brilliant sew. Don't get me wrong, and it is absolutely phenomenal. But I just felt that it was like, oh, she's forgot her dress, and she needs to find something to put on.
There's also something about tulle for me, or netting. I just can't get over it. When you see it exposed like that on Pasha's and on Alex's, it just still feels clunky, almost fancy dress like. Do you know what I mean?
I know where you're coming from, and which is why, like I said, I would associate it with an underskirt.
Yeah.
Equally, it's out there on the fashion world, with what's coming around and you see on red carpets and so on. It is a look at the moment.
It is. It's not going to flow one. When they did the spin, it's always got that netting feel of being a bit rigid and a bit tight.
Bring it in the tuna catch ready for
the... Susie's to finish. I have to say, as I know Susie's ideas sometimes have been hit and miss, or she's got the concept great, but not often fully realised. I loved the concept of this, my patchwork in a patchwork of me. I loved it. What do you think? Okay.
Why did you ask me these questions?
Sorry.
You know what I think. I mean, she didn't follow it through. She didn't get the skirt pockets on.
No.
And the fit wasn't quite right. It didn't seem to skim the model's body. It didn't seem tight enough, and it didn't seem loose enough to be either too tight or too loose. So to me, there was something wrong with the fit. But I know maybe it's because I'm just old, but the colours were too jarring for me.
Oh no, that was the best bit about this, the colours, that fuchsia with the pop, with the lemon. Loved it. And then her taking the time to do that patchwork there. She could have just done lemon, couldn't she?
Well,
and saved 45 minutes and then got more time on the fit. But there we are. Right, that's everyone covered. So yes, Garment of the Week did go to Pasha, and rightly so for that. That dealing with the lace, especially on the top of the bra cups there, and that placement in the middle was wonderful. So it was kind of looking at Elsa, Susie and Marcus. Had Susie done enough to save herself? I think we all said, yeah, it looked like poor Marcus was going to go, wouldn't it? Hey?
You said she'd done enough.
Oh, yes.
I'm not sure whether I agreed with you.
No, true. Evidence on the WhatsApp. But yes, we had to say goodbye to Marcus.
I think with the greatest respect to Marcus, he's held on probably a couple of weeks more than I thought he was going to. So he's done really well. And we've said this before with men in the show, a lot of these garments that they're making, they are women's garments. And, if you are a man sewer, then you're probably making stuff for yourself in the same way that a female sewer would make stuff for themselves. But you're probably making stuff for yourself. I mean, you might make, if you've got little children, you might do something like that. But you're not, making yourselves all those women's garments. So you come on this competition and you're instantly out of your comfort zone because you're not making those garments when you're sat at home. So the fact that he, just accepted every challenge with the gusto that he could and got this far, I think that's phenomenal because it was very clear that he was not making, clothes for women when he was outside of the sewing bee.
But when you look back and you look at his ideas, the quirkiness and the originality of them, I can now fully appreciate that. And his transformation challenge of Mr. Muscle Man, I'll never forget that. I'll have it, Marcus. Send it to me in the post. Well, let's look at the slip account. There aren't any because we're just talking about what we see. Positive. Being positive, indeed. Celebrating the sewing that we can see. And yes, there was more, which was great. And maybe now we're going to see more. We've got the quarterfinals. We're suddenly going to really get into it as we go, who's going to be in the final?
Yeah, I mean, but then I think, you have to look at what's happened over the last couple of weeks. I think, we've got to get rid of, obviously, people over the next couple of weeks. I think Susie is in a precarious position. I know they don't particularly look at what's happened in the past, but, I think it was between her and Marcus, really, this week. And then, as much as I said the other week, some people, like Elsa, maybe they've reached their level. She did struggle this week with bits. And, she is young. She hasn't got years of sewing under her belt. So, we've seen it in the past that someone's been very, very good, and then they just get to a certain level and they can't quite go a bit further.
Or
She was brought into contention with the judges' discussions this week.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't stop Alex or Luke or Pasha from having a bad week, and we've seen that as well.
Absolutely.
But I think, those are the three we kind of got to look at the bottom next week, maybe.
Because next week, she could have makes that she's already made before in her experience, so she'll be at the top. I
can't remember what next week is because I kind of it came up, didn't it? And I sent you a message.
Don't
and
you
now
worry.
I can't remember what it was.
Don't you worry. I'm now about to tell you, and viewers, don't you worry about the slippers, because I think we've spent the last 2 weeks trawling to the back of the telly to get them after all that timing debacle, that they're ready to be thrown again next week, because next week is Diva Week. I don't think we've ever had that.
Was that what it was called?
It's what it's called, Diva Week.
I remember looking at I obviously missed that bit because I just remember looking at the clips and thought, oh God.
I presume it's pop stars, famous people, and famous divas that are going to be the inspiration for the full 3 rounds.
Inspired by.
We'll soon see. So there we are. If you've missed the slippers, don't worry. I'm sure they'll be back next week as we go into the quarterfinals, everyone. 3 more weeks to go before the end of this season. And maybe now it will start heating up. Is that what you say? Thank you for watching. Thanks as always for your comments. As I say, last week's was overwhelmed by them all. We do read them, but I didn't get to reply to many at all. But I will do so this week because we're back on it. And look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, Tig. See you for Diva Week 8. Cheers, everyone. Bye.